Okay, I think we are live. So hello everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm Amber and here is Jo. I'm assuming you can probably see her. And we are joining you from Skylark Literary. We're based in the UK, but we work and sell in both the UK and the US directly, and all around the world as well. We have a team who do that for us. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, a little bit of background about us, Jo and I were both publishers originally. So our background is in editorial. We both worked for the major trade publishers, Hachette, Random House, Simon and Schuster, Hodder.
Orion.
Yes, here in the UK, and we were editors and publishers. Before eventually we decided we wanted to set up an agency of our own, basically because we wanted to work more closely with authors again. I think the further you go within sort of corporate publishing and the higher you get up that corporate ladder, the more removed you become from the authors, and you're all focused on profit and loss and budget sheets and strategy. And really for both of us, our great love is working with authors on their lovely, exciting manuscripts and being inspired by them. So the whole point of Skylark was to create an agency that would be very boutique. We are quite selective. We only sign up authors who we feel really are the best of the best. But we specifically look for authors who are new, not necessarily established, and who want that nurturing environment and some support through the publishing industry. And that is what we aim to provide. So we are very much always seeking new talent. So please do keep us in mind for all your submissions, because we are nothing without all of you. And we are always keen to see great new work. So since our agency is specifically looking for new talent and new authors who may not have approached a publisher or an agent ever before, we thought that a good topic for a Q&A would be to discuss that first approach and how best to pitch your manuscript, your baby, for agents and for publishers. So before we actually launch into your questions, we thought we would just run through a few of our top tips, some of which may seem really obvious and basic, but you would be amazed how often we see submissions that don't manage to do these things. So we feel it sort of bears repeating to just go through those very quickly. So Jo, tip one.
Okay, so first and foremost, what we want to say is don't panic about pitching to agents. As Amber said, we are absolutely nothing without authors. So we are always looking for something great to knock our socks off. And we are willing you to win when we're going in our submissions inbox and we see your email. We're hoping that we're going to open your email and find something brilliant. So we're on your side and we are looking for talent, and we really will see the best of what you've presented to us, whatever that might be. So, you know, with that in mind, don't worry about it too much. Just do the best you can. I mean, what we want you to realize is that it's your writing that we really care about. If you mess it up a little bit, or if you accidentally make a mistake, while, you know, it won't stop us, it won't stop us loving your work. And, you know, one of my best authors that I love dearly addressed me as Joanna in the first email he ever sent me. So, and I still took him on, even though he got my name wrong. And he was, so, you know, just do the best you can. We know that your strength is writing. Writing is what we want you to be great at, not necessarily pitching. So that's the first and most important thing to remember.
Yeah. So a good pitch can certainly help you, but it isn't the be all and end all. At the end of the day, any good agent will look at your work, will read your manuscript. So it really is, if your manuscript is great, then, you know, your pitch does not matter, because people will read and love your manuscript. So do not worry. So our second point, I think, is it is worth doing your homework. You know, check out the websites of every agent, make a short list of agents. Probably best not to do a scattergun approach and send your manuscript out to every agent under the sun, because you may find that by submitting to a chosen few agents, A, you can target your favourite ones, and B, you might get some useful feedback. So if everybody is saying no for some reason, it may be that they all say the same thing, and that will give you a chance to work on that thing and then go out to some other agents. If you've already sent your manuscript to everybody and everybody's turned it down, you're kind of stuck, because most agents will not look again at something that they've turned down, even if you revise it. Agents are super busy. We are inundated with submissions. So we generally, we look at your manuscript, we seriously consider it when it comes in, and we reach a decision. And then unless we specifically request to see a revised version, we don't look again. So it's quite a good idea to make a short list of agents you're interested in and send to them first and see what their response is. So do your homework, check out the agents thoroughly, decide who you feel would be a good fit for you and who makes you feel comfortable and you feel happy about approaching, and approach those people first. Do make the effort to see what their submission guidelines are. They do vary from agency to agency. For example, lots of agents ask for the first 3 chapters, for example. We actually ask for the full manuscript right from the get-go. So make sure you've checked out what the submission guidelines are, so that you are giving agents what they want and getting their names right and things like that, because it's not the be all and end all. And if you send me the first 3 chapters and I love them, I will come and ask you for the full. But if you've given me what I want right up front from the get-go, it's respectful, it puts me in a good mood, it makes me feel that you've actually taken the time to read our website and to see what we want, and that just all helps to smooth the path. And it's something that you can all easily do online, so it really is worthwhile. Do your homework.
Definitely do your homework. That's a really good point. And also in that preparation time where you're thinking about who you're going to send it to, also spend a really good amount of time really honing your email, your pitch within your email, looking at your synopsis, making sure it's as tight as it can be. Also have a really good look at your first 3 chapters, because they are what will absolutely hook your reader in and hook your agent in. So it's vital that all of these things are as good as they can be for you to give you that best opportunity. Because as Amber said, we don't usually see them again, so you can't kind of go back and go, oh, maybe if I'd opened it at chapter 4, they'd have liked it. So think about how you're hooking your reader in. And agents don't have a lot of time. We also, as well as checking our submissions inbox and reading all your submissions, we're also looking after our clients. So we're dealing with contracts and publishers and sorting out problems. And so it isn't that we're just sort of sitting there. So you really want to give yourself the best possible shot from the outset. So, get feedback. Maybe if you've got a critique group, maybe run through with them. They're always really interesting. Think about read it out loud. That's always a good one. And then again, this feeds in as well to that small select group of agents you're approaching. Because if you're finding that you're not hitting the mark, then maybe you want to look a bit again at your submission package and work out if there's anything there that you can really refine and hone for the next tranche if it's not worked for the first. So you can pick the next 5 or 6 agents when you go for your next level, and you will then be able to take on any feedback, have a little think about how it might have been received, and move on from there. So definitely worth spending that time to really refine your package.
And when you're looking at your opening chapters, of course, your actual manuscript is the most vital part of that submission package. And the opening chapter, indeed, the opening page is probably the most vital part of that manuscript, because that's where you really hook the reader or not. And what you don't want is for them to read the opening page and just think, this is boring, lose interest, walk away. So really spend the time to make sure that opening page or 2 are as fascinating and grabbing and gripping and compulsive as they can be. So, for example, try to avoid cliches. Try to avoid opening your book with a character who is waking up in the morning, or who is running away from bullies or being bullied at school, or who is looking in the mirror and describing themselves in the mirror. You know, these are all cliches that have been done time and time again. And as soon as we open a manuscript and we see that, you know, of course we're not going to just give up on it straight away because of that, but it doesn't immediately draw us in and win us over, because we have seen these cliches so many times before. So try and avoid those sorts of things. Try and open your book at a point in the story that feels really intriguing and unique to your story, something that, you know, readers won't have seen before, and find ways of introducing your characters and setting up your story that don't rely on, you know, tired old cliches, because that will make an enormous difference, probably more of a difference than anything else that you do. So that really is worth thinking about.
Absolutely. And so essentially, with the whole tone of your package, what you need to kind of find the balance of is that sort of being thorough and professional and checking through everything for typos and spellings and, you know, and maybe titles that you like, you know, that person represents. So you want to be thorough and professional, but we also want to see a bit of yourself, your personality. We'd love to hear a bit about what your interests are, what you're passionate about beyond reading and writing, obviously. Just give us a few lines about what you enjoy or what makes you you and different, and do, you know, introduce that bit of personality, because we really love it. We really love to sort of get a sense of who you are in that email. So it's our only chance at the beginning to get a sense of you. So please do feel free to tell us a bit about yourself. I know it's really excruciating sometimes, but if you can, we really love to hear it. So with that in mind, I'm just conscious of the time.
Yes,
we probably ought to crack on with some questions.
Great. Okay, so the first question that we've got coming through is, what grabbed you in the last few query letters you requested on? So, Jo, what?
Right. So interestingly, I had an email that came in this week, and the pitch was so good. It really, really caught my eye. And actually, Amber says we don't take on many people at all, but I actually ended up offering representation to this person, because not just because their writing was great and I just devoured their manuscript, but their pitch really caught my eye, their email. So they had a line that had interestingly, had 3 comps in, and she had lined out, I can't really say what they were, but 3 different things, 3 different books, and also with a reference to a TV program as well, so you can use those too. 3 different pieces of recognizable literature and or something like a TV program that really engaged me. So that was really interesting. So that was that first top line, and then she had sort of a more detailed paragraph about what actually happens in the novel. It explained it really well. It set up the real tension of the whole book. And so to have that tension and that really fed into my desire to then dive into the manuscript. And so that is what I think is really key, is having that really punchy first line to really sort of set it up. It doesn't have to be the comps that you kick off with. If you've got a really killer concept, like one of my authors has a book which is about a girl who is bullied at school and is very, I haven't started this very well, I always do this badly. So I really feel your pain with the whole pitching thing, it's really hard. She basically creates an AI and ends up falling in love with it. So, you know, it's quite a strong concept, and that was her top line. And that's how we kind of thought about that when we were pitching it to publishers as well. So really strong first line if you can, and then a more detailed paragraph, which is still building that desire for someone to read it, that tension, really helps, I would say.
Yes, and I think that for me also, I really like it when somebody's covering email is quite friendly and chatty, and I really get a sense of them as a real live person who I like and engage with, and that makes me more interested to read their novel and to read what they've written. So I think that everything, you know, at the end of the day, everything Jo has said is right, in that really what we need is a great concept and a good hook, and then a great pitch that's, you know, short and to the point and that immediately grabs attention. And that's why that dreaded elevator pitch is so important, because if you can get it right, it can really work hard for you. And that's a really useful thing to have nailed. But it is very, very difficult. But it's lovely when it works. It's a wonderful thing, and it does make us dive in all the quicker and keen to read the work. But some personality and some friendliness also goes a long way.
Definitely. Oh, this next question is a real corker, actually. So when using comps, how similar must they be to your own book? Do they have to be similar in almost every way? Or is it okay to just mention that you are comping to a particular element of said book?
I think it's absolutely fine to make it clear that you are comping to a particular element of the book. I think comps are really useful because they do immediately give somebody a sense of your book. I would advise you not to use comps that are wild, you know, just because there's one small element in common with yours. If on the whole tone of that comp is entirely different, I'd suggest don't use it, because you probably will give the agent or the publisher the wrong feel and the wrong impression. And the worst thing about comps is when you set an expectation using comps, which your manuscript then doesn't deliver. And that's the one downside to comps, is that, you know, it can really build up your manuscript, which is great, but then you are creating a real expectation in the sense of the reader that your manuscript then has to deliver on. So be really careful with your choice of comps. The other thing with comps is, you know, please make sure you use comps that you are 99% sure everybody will have come across, will have read, will have seen on the TV. You know, it's no good using comps that are really obscure, that people don't understand, and something that's very, very obvious or popular to you may not necessarily be with every agent. So just be a little bit careful of that. You need to make sure that the comps you're using are really widely recognizable.
Definitely. And also what you can do, I think, and this is what I've seen people do quite skillfully, is say what area that you're comping to. So for example, you could say something like includes supernatural elements, a bit like, you know, like The Umbrella Agency, or has, you know, all the court drama of Bridgerton, or something. You know, that doesn't work actually, but, you know, or, you know, you can kind of point to what you're actually using from that novel that you're actually drawing from, and that maybe makes it a little bit more specific. So that's quite good.
Yeah. So somebody has asked us, what types of books are you really wanting to receive pitches about right now?
Okay, so I think that's an interesting question. Yes, because I think we really don't know. What we really want is something that we haven't thought that we really want. And it's really, really interesting how when we talk to editors in publishers, that we do all the time, and they say, well, yeah, I'm really looking for a really funny middle grade, or I'm looking for a really romantic YA, and you give them those things. I'm like, I found the perfect thing for you, here you are. And they'd be like, it's not quite right. And then you give them something that they have not even thought about, and they totally fall in love with it. And those are the sweet, sweet things that we love to find. So really, we just want something that is just going to be so immersive that we have to stop everything else that we're doing, and we just have to read this manuscript. Yeah, that's what
that's what we're always looking for. And I mean, just to be a little bit more specific, I am always looking for unreliable narrators. You know, something like We Were Liars, that's the sort of thing that I really get excited about, where you've got beautiful writing, a real intriguing mystery or plot line, and an unreliable narrator. For, you know, especially for YA, I think that's really exciting. Obviously, a strong voice. We always are looking for great voices, and love stories. At the moment, love stories is something else that I think I particularly like. You know, be it LGBTQ YA or just a standard boy-girl love story. I'm very happy with all of the above. But I think
that's what
feel
we're all looking for at the moment, isn't it, Amber? It's and like talking to the editors as well, I feel this is really coming across is we all just want to read positive things. I think what I'm feeling is that I struggle with anything that's gloomy. I struggle to, with the world as it is, it's really hard to try and escape into a novel that is also gloomy. So I would say that probably at the moment, what I'm looking for are things that bring me joy. So I want joy in some shape or form, whether it's lovely romance, whether it's, a fantastic concept, within middle grade, or just something that warms the cockles of my heart. It's what I'm really looking for, I think.
Yes, I think we all need something feel good right now.
Absolutely right. What are your thoughts on working with a writer who has self-published successfully, but is interested in moving more into traditional publishing?
This is an interesting one. Absolutely. If we come across an author who has self-published, that's great. That's fine. I mean, typically we would be then looking to place a fresh novel, so not something that has been self-published. Publishers on the whole are a little bit wary of a book that has already been published, even if that's only self-published. If it's done super brilliantly well, like 50 Shades of Grey, for example, that's the sort of book where publishers will take something that's been self-published and republish it again in the general trade market, because they do get really excited about something which they can see has, really garnered excitement and, the imagination of the world. But, we're looking at sort of 20, 30,000 sales, which for a self-published novel can be quite a challenge. So we would usually be looking to work with that author on a fresh new thing that we could then take and sell into publishers. But, the fact that they have self-published in the past would be neither a drawback nor necessarily an asset. All we really care about is their writing and their concept and how great that is.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Should we move swiftly on?
Yes, let's do that.
What is the best way to pitch multiple picture book manuscripts? I have been trying to tailor the query to each agent with one manuscript submission, but how do I know it's the right one for them?
Okay, so we might not be the best place to answer this because we don't currently accept picture book submissions, so we don't get a lot of them. But I would say you can probably pitch more than one at a time. I think they sort of usually say 3 to 4 is totally acceptable to pitch. So I think you could put a number on one submission, but I think they should be your absolute best work. I think if you submit one and then you get a rejection for that, and then you submit another in quick succession, I think that might be a little bit tiring for the agent. I would say that actually you should pitch a number of your absolute best work that you're the most proudest of, and then sort of give them a break and have a little think about how you've pitched it. When you say how do I know it's the right one for them, I guess it's a really difficult call. It's you have to think about the market and I hope you've done your homework and you're thinking about where it would sit and what books it would sit next to. So it's a case of really feeling confident about that particular one, not only in the way it's written but also in where it's heading in the market. Obviously taking into account that with picture books you have to really think about the international market as well, and making it as broad and applicable across the world as you can, because obviously printing picture books is much easier with international partners, so you can have a bigger print run, which is why publishers are very keen to have very broad interest when it comes to picture books.
I think the strength of picture books is that they're short and easy to read, and agents and publishers love that. So it does enable you to pitch 2 or 3 at once in one fell swoop. Just make sure that your individual pitches for each one are clear, distinct, short, not too long, and make it clear where you think it will sit in the market. And at the end of the day, to be honest, I don't think you need to worry too much about whether the particular ones that you've chosen are right for that particular agent, because a good agent is looking for talent. So of course it helps if you've hit on a topic that is particularly interesting to them or dear to their heart. But even if you haven't, if you're a strong writer, hopefully they will see that in whatever it is that you have sent them, and that will spark their interest. And they may ask you then for more ideas, or they may want to discuss some of the ideas that you've sent with you. But I don't think you should get too hung up on, oh, did I just send the wrong idea to the wrong agent, because these things do tend to work their way through. And if you've got a skill and you've got a talent and you're a born picture book writer, and agents, we will see that. That's what we're looking for always. So don't worry about it too much. But as Jo said, do feel free to put 2 or 3 on one submission, for sure. I can't remember whose turn it is to read the question, Jo, but shall I read it?
Yes, go for it, Amber.
I shall go for it. The question is, what makes a strong synopsis? Any do's or don'ts? God, this is dear to our heart.
Oh, we love this question.
Yes, we like this question.
Synopsis is an absolute pig. We know this job is the thing you hate and you dread, and I totally understand why, because you're trying to distill your baby, your massive, hundreds of thousands of words into, a 1 page. And we do mean 1 page when we ask for 1 page, and no cheating with, squishing up your margins and, painting teeny tiny fonts. We know all the tricks, so don't try them. The thing about synopsis is it really needs to have your entire novel laid out in a really careful way, nice and clearly, so we can follow it. So you're going to have to strip out some of those subplots, and it's really you need to approach it as if you're describing it maybe for a pitch, but also you're using each summary. I'm really phrasing this badly, Amber. To you're honing it down to its bare bones. So you're basically stripping everything away down, and it's really hard to do. But if you
main bits of the plot.
Exactly. So you're trying to find those really, really important. And if you think about your structure of your novel as well, you need to be thinking about, where is your midpoint? What's happening? What's important in there that we need to know? You also need to make sure you put all the twists in so we can see what you are doing. But it is worth checking on submission guidelines, because some agents, we've been on panels before where there's been disagreement about whether people want spoilers. For the most part, most agents want to see your spoilers because they want to know how you managed to wrap up all those clever little things that you've laid out. So yes, it's really difficult, but really it needs to be the structure, the absolute backbone with all of the elements that makes your book what it is. So it's a really interesting exercise for you to work out what you are actually writing, because if you can't do this, often it's an indication that possibly your book is not maybe clear enough in its direction. Maybe its narrative thread is not strong enough for you to be able to pull that out. Yeah,
that's a really good tip, actually. If you're really struggling to condense your synopsis to 1 page, it can be a really good indicator that you are not clear enough about what your story is, about what backbone of that novel is and the narrative thread. And that maybe the book's too long, maybe there are too many subplots, maybe it's too muddy. It can be a really good way of realizing that you need to pare the book back, so that you can make it into a really good, readable, strong synopsis. Because the synopsis is basically just a sort of shorter version of your novel, where you are putting all those beats together in quick succession so that somebody can pick up that synopsis and quickly look through and see what all the exciting key points are through the novel. What happens at the beginning, what happens in the middle, what happens at the end, and how you've cleverly brought it all together at the end. And that's why, as Jo says, most people, we like spoilers. Most of us do want to see the twists and turns and the spoilers. But that's where it becomes so important to have done your homework at the beginning, because there are agents that don't want spoilers. And then you are going to have to tweak your synopsis for them to make sure you're not giving the wrong things away. So, this is, again, where it becomes really useful to have checked out submission guidelines carefully before you send out. but I think that's what makes a strong synopsis, is that clarity, really, clarity, and that through line through the novel.
Definitely, I agree with that. Okay, how important is getting the right word count to you? Ooh, good question. I.e., would it be off-putting if someone queried one too short/long? If so, what are your suggestions for YA and middle and MG brackets?
This is a really good question. And there are two elements to this. The first answer is it is off-putting if a book is completely wrong. The other is, it's, you know, if the writing is sublime and the storyline is brilliant, it wouldn't stop us from contacting that author and seeking to work with them to improve it. But the more you don't stick to the kind of general rules for your book, the more pressure you are putting on your writing and your storyline to be so amazingly brilliant that we don't care that you've broken the rules, that it transcends those rules. And that is a big ask. You know, you're already going out into a world where you're in competition with a lot of other authors to get attention for your book. So putting that kind of pressure on your novel is not really a great idea. So it is quite important to get the right word count, the right length for your novel, not least because it shows that you know your market. Usually the people that send us novels that are far too short or far too long are people who don't know the market very well, and that's where it shows that they don't really know quite what they should be doing. Generally speaking, we've actually, in fact, you can check out our blog on our website, on the Skylark Literary website. Please do, because we cover lots of topics that are of interest to authors, and one of the ones that we talk about is appropriate lengths for different age groups. So you will find some suggested word counts there. But on the whole, for middle grade, around about 40 to 50,000 words is your sweet spot. You don't really want to go too much beyond 50,000 if you can help it. And anything from about 30,000 up is entirely acceptable. Many publishers feel that, you know, the shorter the better in a way, because it does make it easier, especially for the translation markets. As soon as your novel is translated out of English, the word count goes right up, generally speaking, which makes it more daunting for that age group, those readers in other countries. So keeping the word count a bit shorter is preferable to being too long. And for YA, I would say anything from 60 to 90,000 is about the sweet spot. You really don't want to go longer than that if you can possibly help it. Fantasy is the one exception. You know, epic fantasies do tend to be longer and can get away with being a bit longer, but even so, it's not ideal. You know, if you can keep your novel really nice and pacey and you know, around that 70, 80,000 word mark, that's going to be, you know, really preferable. So that's just a rough guide.
And it is really interesting how important that is. And it's important to editors when we submit. You know, often the editors are interested in the word counts, and they are daunted by, you know, really heavy sort of looking books, that particularly if they're overly long. I think, you know, if yours is on the shorter side, there's a bit more leeway, although you need to have the plot there so you can kind of develop it. But I think when it's really long, I think it is off-putting to commissioning editors as well, because not only have they got to read it, they've got to persuade all their sales and marketing and rights teams to read this chunky thing, and people are busy. So it's frustrating, but it makes such a difference for so many different reasons.
And lots of writers are so enthusiastic, and it is far more common, I would say, to see manuscripts that are too long than ones that are too short. But it really is problematic. You know, if you possibly can, be strict with yourself, pare yourself right back, because your manuscript will win as a result of it. You know, it will help. It is quite an important thing. Which brings us on to another question. How important is it to have a catchy query / pitch? I feel like these books are sometimes in a category all their own. Example, something like Harry Potter in space with zombies, and get a lot of traction on social media, but don't always mean there's a great book to follow. Very true.
Yes, that's really interesting and really true, actually. And some of our most dearest books that we've loved the most have been really difficult to fit into, say, one-line pitch, and really they just speak for themselves when you start reading them. They just envelop you in this, in the story. And I think there is a real difficulty with having these really punchy, great pitches and a book that doesn't deliver that. And on the flip side, having a book that is really difficult to distill into a catchy pitch. So yes, it is important to have a catchy query if you can. It really is. If you can do it right, it can go all the way through. So, we might use it as we pitch to commissioning editors, and they might use it in the acquisitions process to get everybody on board, from the rights team, the sales and marketing, design, everybody really engaged with that story. So if you've got a catchy pitch, and then, possibly it could end up on the back of the book. If it's really great, you might end up seeing it written on the back of the book in the blurb. So if you can do it, it's brilliant. But if you can't, don't worry, is essentially what we're saying.
I think that's true. And I think it occurred to me listening to Jo speaking there that really at the end of the day, your book needs to have one of two things, and preferably both. Either you need an absolutely kick-ass concept, something really high concept that feels really original, really new, and that can be summed up in that one-line pitch, that makes everyone go, "Ooh, that's different. Hadn't thought of that." Like the book that Jo was talking about earlier about the girl where she creates an artificial intelligence and then falls in love with it. That really hooked a lot of people because it felt really new and different. So you either need that really interesting, different concept, or you need great writing. So if you're writing an adventure story that's quite classic, that doesn't have a concept that's particularly standout, then your writing needs to be superlative. Then your writing needs to be so amazing, whether it be the voice of the character or the world building or whatever it may be. But your writing needs to have something about it that is absolutely standout and sets it apart from all those other books that are already on the market. What we're always looking for at Skylark is both of those things together. And what you're really looking for in your pitch is to demonstrate that your book has both of those things. But it's very hard to do. And it brings us on to the next question, which I can see sitting there, which says, would you still consider signing someone if the query is bad, but the manuscript is good? And I think Jo will agree with me. The answer is yes, absolutely. It's all about the manuscript.
Exactly. It's all about the manuscript. And you have to remember that also it's our job to sell the manuscript. And if we love it, and if we've got enough passion for it, we can find a way to pitch it. It's part of our job to sell your book. So if you have got a fantastic manuscript, then we will find a way to frame it. And Amber and I work closely on each other's pitches. So again, that's helpful for us when we're pitching, because obviously we have to do the same thing to the commissioning editors. And we'll often work together to put together a really, really strong pitch. So if you don't have it and and you can't find it, don't worry, we can find that. If your manuscript does it for us, then we really can find it.
Yeah, and we can help. It's all about the manuscript. If the writing and the story are brilliant, we can help you with everything else.
Can I do the next one?
Yes.
My latest manuscript is a YA fantasy with a central love story. The story ends on a positive note, but the love story tragically. How acceptable is that in YA writing?
Completely acceptable. I think what you need to think about is what the trade-off is here. If you have spent a lot of time in the book making the reader really fall in love with your characters and really invest in their relationship and their love story, and then it's going to be tragic at the end, that's fine, but it needs to be the sort of tragedy that feels satisfying in some way and that achieves something, so that the reader feels that the loss of that happy ending is worth it. And you say here that the book ends on a positive note. Opinion is probably divided on this, and there are probably agents and readers who would be fine with that. To me, that doesn't sound like quite enough. I'd want more than a positive note. I want the book to end in a really uplifting and inspiring way, even if that involves tragedy. that's fine. I'm down with the tragedy, but overall, I want to get to the end of the book and feel inspired and feel uplifted, not dragged down into a pit of despair. There's definitely an element of personal taste in there.
That's so true. Yeah.
So it.
So for example, Amber and I, we differed over Only Ever Yours, didn't we? Because that has a very dark sort of
very dark
ending, which I just actually couldn't finish. I just thought I can't, and I knew it wasn't going to get any better. So I had to just scrap it, because I just thought I can't go in that place and have to try and drag myself out again. So I think I'm spot on that it needs to have that thing that builds your reader back up and kind of sets them back on and off they go. You know, you've got a responsibility to your reader's mood as well, I think, and your readers kind of,
especially when you're writing to young people. And funnily enough, Only Ever Yours is quite an interesting example, because there's me saying I like an ending that's uplifting and inspiring, and Only Ever Yours is very, very dark at the end, but I still enjoyed it. I thought it was very, very clever, very thought-provoking book. But normally I would look for a more uplifting ending. And I think that possibly, and I don't know, but I think possibly that book could have been even more inspiring and more powerful if there had been a glimmer of hope at the end of it.
Yeah,
interesting debate. It was a phenomenal book. And interestingly, also that the author has gone on to write adult novels, because that was really quite an adult YA novel. Generally speaking, I think when you're writing for young people, personally, my feeling is I like the book to be uplifting at the end, and I think that is a general feeling throughout the industry. Although there will always be people who differ. But tragedy on its own, tragedy per se, is no bad thing. Tragedy is fine, but it needs to be in tandem with a really strong payoff, I think.
I totally agree. Okay. If you're querying a fantasy novel that has a prologue, should you send that as your first page? If the agent's guidelines ask for a first page, or should you skip to the beginning of your chapter? Wow, listen, why is your prologue there? It should be there for drawing your reader in. So if you're not happy with your prologue as a way of starting your manuscript off in a positive way, then maybe it shouldn't be there, is my thought. Amber?
I tend to agree with that. I'm not a fan of prologues. When you have a prologue, you're basically asking your reader to start the book twice, because you're asking them to read that first prologue and invest in that, and then you're taking that away and you're asking them to start again with something fresh and read their next bit and invest in that. It can be done. Of course, there are great books that have prologues, and when it is done well, it's great. So I'm not completely opposed to a prologue, but I do think it's very difficult to do them well. And if far too many fantasy novels use prologues, and they're lazy and they're not working. And Joe's right. If you're using a prologue, that prologue needs to be working really hard for you, and it needs to be really exciting and provide a really great opening to the book. And if it isn't, and you're not confident of it as your first page, then maybe you do need to think about, do I need it? Should I go straight in with chapter 1, or do I need the prologue, but I need to make it stronger? I guess the other answer is you could always cheat a little bit and send the first page of the prologue. It depends how long the prologue is. If the prologue's very short, you could get away with sending the prologue and then the first page of chapter 1. But if you've got quite a long prologue, then it does need to be that first page of the prologue, and you need to make sure that it's good enough. But on the whole, I would, if you've got a prologue in your book, just take a minute to question whether you really need it, because it is not without its problems and challenges.
I agree. Definitely agree.
How do you show your interest in an agent in the query letter without seeming like you have been stalking them? Do agents like it when we mention other projects they have worked on? Sorry, I was about to say, Joe, go.
No, but yeah, that's fine. I think we love being stalked. We've got such great guys. We're like, you've been looking at what I've been doing. I would say that I really feel flattered when someone has taken that time to really look at things that I'm really proud of. So, it's easy to find out nowadays. You just go on Twitter and see what the agent is excited about. And so you can easily find out kind of what they've been doing. And I, from my perspective, maybe I'm just vain, but I really enjoy reading that someone has got joy out of books that I've worked on.
I agree with that. I think all of us, we all do this job for the love, really, rather than for the money. And I think, therefore, it is always gratifying to know that somebody's enjoyed something that we've done. But it needs to feel genuine. Don't go hunting around to find a book that you can then pretend you liked because you think it might impress the agent. It can sort of show, to be honest. I think when it's really heartfelt and you really have engaged with a book or an author that agent represents or that agent has worked with in the past, that's lovely, but it's not necessary. So, don't force it because I think it can show. So I think, yes, agents are absolutely happy for you to sort them and to mention things that are appropriate if that rings true, if it's true and real for you, but it's not necessary. So don't force it. How do you prefer? Sorry, Jo.
No.
How do you prefer to see books with multiple point of view characters pitched? Mine has 3.
Well, I would say you're pitching the story more than the points of view. So you pitch it in the normal way, I would say. I wouldn't see any difference in the way you're presenting the story from a sort of bird's eye view, and that's what a pitch is. So really, you're not having to kind of delve into that voice at that pitch level. And the same for the synopsis. It's very much a bird's eye view of your novel, so you don't have to then go into each point of view. I think 3 points of view is interesting, and as long as those voices are really nice and distinct, then that all sounds fine to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're really relying on your manuscript to do the talking and those characters and their individual voices to come through in the manuscript. At the pitch level, it's useful to know that your manuscript uses different points of view. So it's useful to tell us that there are different characters' points of view used, but we're not really going to get into that until the manuscript itself. And that's absolutely fine. You may find a way to work it in with the synopsis, obviously. And you can tell us a bit about, if those points of view, presumably in your case with the 3 points of view, they're going to be quite fundamental to the novel. So in your pitch, you might find in the pitch paragraph, as opposed to the 1-line pitch, but in that pitch paragraph, you might choose to use it to give us a bite-sized piece of information about character 1, character 2, character 3. But, only do that if you can make each character sound really interesting and intriguing, and so that we want to engage. Because when you're pitching, you're always choosing that thing about your novel that is most going to engage the reader. So you might use it in your pitch, but I don't think you necessarily have to. I think all you need to do is mention that it's a book that uses multiple points of view, and then let your manuscript do the talking.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds good. How many submissions would you say you receive in a week versus how many fulls do you request? Interested in hearing a ballpark ratio. Thanks.
So we don't. It's a difficult one because we don't request fulls. I mean, our submission guidelines specify that we want the full up front. The whole thing of asking for 3 chapters and then requesting a full dates from the olden days when people were submitting their manuscripts on paper. And you can imagine agents were getting hundreds of submissions and they didn't want piles of paper piling up on their doorstep. So they would ask for the first 3 chapters and then they'd only request the full manuscript if those first 3 chapters showed promise. That's not such an issue in this day and age because we're all submitting by email and you can attach a full manuscript as easily as you can attach the first 3 chapters. And for us, we like to have the full so that if we enjoy the first 3 chapters and we want to keep going, we're not forced to stop, email the author, wait for them to send the full, by which time we've lost that momentum, we may have lost interest, and the moment's gone. So we like to be able to keep reading, while we're excited about the manuscript. But that means we are getting fulls constantly all the time. So we are never rarely, unless somebody hasn't obeyed our submission guidelines, and I know that none of you would ever think to do that. We are not really ever requesting fulls. So I suppose for us it would be a case of how many do we receive versus how many do we sign. We receive literally hundreds a week, and we sign, I don't even know what the ratio would be, probably 1 in 1,000. I mean,
Well, in a year, we probably get what, a couple of thousand submissions, or maybe more than that. And then I signed, I think, 2 people last year, possibly 3. So you know, I think that just shows how, you know, how
selective we are. And we're not, you know, I wish I could say we are rare. We're not, you know, all agents are receiving literally thousands and thousands of submissions a year, and they are not signing hundreds and hundreds of authors. You know, unfortunately, this is what you're up against. It is a very competitive world. But if you've taken the time to do things like this conference and to ask questions and to really think about how you approach your pitch and research the agents that you're approaching, you know, that already sets you far, far ahead of an awful lot of those other submissions. So, you know, it's not, you can, you know, that's why thinking about your approach really can help you. But it's a small proportion, a very tiny proportion, probably, as we said, 1 in 1,000 that we actually sign ultimately as a client.
But just to sort of end on a more positive note, I think the most important thing is that you love writing, and that, and whatever point on the process of publishing you are at, so whether you've just started writing, whether you've got an agent and you're going through the trauma of waiting for your agent to hear back from publishers, or whether you're, you know, a best-selling author and you're worried that your next book is going to be the one that where everyone realizes you're no good, that the anxieties of writing never go away. So what you should really be doing is focusing on how much you love writing, and really celebrating your glories, celebrating your, you know, your competition wins, and celebrating when your crit group think your, you know, last chapter was brilliant. If you get an agent, that's fantastic. That's a, you know, you've achieved a huge amount just there, you know, before you even got to submission to publishers. So celebrate your achievements, I think, is the thing that's most important to bear in mind.
I think that's so true. Write because you love writing, and finding an agent, getting published, those things, try and think of them as bonuses, you know, because there are loads of really fantastic, talented writers that never get published, and that's not because they're not good. It's just because it hasn't gone to the right person at the right time, or it's not the right book for that moment of the zeitgeist. You know, publishing is largely luck as well as brilliance. And if you're not lucky, then, you know, that can work against you, and that's not your fault. You know, you could be brilliant and not be lucky. So try not to see publishing or being published as the be all and end all. Try to write because you love it. And on the whole, you know, that love will be rewarded. You'll enjoy it. People will enjoy what you're writing. So I think that is the real key thing. But our time is up.
Time is up, and we should let you go on to your next event. So many good things to see at Write On Con, and we're so delighted we were here. So thank you so much for joining us, and your brilliant questions, which were really, really spot on, really insightful.
I'm sorry we didn't manage to get through them all, but they were really good questions. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your time. And remember, you can always go to our website, submit to us, send us your manuscripts. We love to see them. You know, so please do.
And good luck, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.